Hello everyone, and welcome back to my series of constructing foam RC model aircraft using the sectioned foam fuselage technique and hot wire cut foam wings. You're probably getting tired of hearing me say that. In this episode, we will continue on with the fuselage. Now, the previous episodes, we've pretty much finalized all the templates that we need for the sections themselves. In this episode, we're going to finalize all of the fuselage templates, period. We will be done with everything that we'll need to cut out all the foam after we're done with this session. We will be concentrating on the wing saddle cutout, the hatch cutout, and the horizontal stabilizer cutout. Now, a lot of this particular episode is also going to be devoted to airfoils and how to go about importing them into SketchUp. It's just a little bit convoluted, but it's something that is really so useful that it's worthwhile learning how to do it. And I'll illustrate that in this episode. If you're using another CAD program, importing airfoils is a matter of importing a set of coordinates, and most CAD programs will allow you to do that one way or the other. I, of course, have no idea how to tell you about every CAD program in the world how to do that. But when you see the airfoils, I think that with help from Google searches, etc., you'll be able to do that in any CAD program. So stay with me. All right, everyone, we're back in the SketchUp workspace once again. And today we're going to talk, we've done both the EPS over here and XPS fuselage section templates. The only other thing that we've got to do, or I especially have got to do, is come in here and label these for the number that they are to keep from getting confusing as we go along, especially those of you that might be doing two separate sets like this. You don't want to get them mixed up. So I'm going to go in there right quick and use a tool in SketchUp called 3D text. It's not going to be 3D, of course. It's just going to write on the surface of them. I'll number them all and get right back to you. Okay, we're back again, and as you can see, all of the formers, both for the EPS and XPS, are done. And I would highly recommend, guys, that even with a simple set of templates like this, I would recommend that you go ahead and label them, because if you get into a more complex model, some of these fuselage formers are not going to be that different, and you're going to run into problems with alignment if you don't. So keep them labeled so that they're nice and easily identified as we progress. All right, back once again, and this time we're ready to start doing our last three templates for the fuselage. We're going to do the wing saddle template, the hatch template, and the horizontal stabilizer template. But first we need to talk about airfoils. There's any number of ways of doing this. I've already showed you how to manipulate curves with the Bezier tool, but there's another way. It involves a little bit more work, but in the long run, it will allow you to import many different kinds of airfoils very, very accurately. One of the problems with SketchUp is that as the various versions come out, some of the plugins that work with earlier versions don't work with the later versions. And that's the case of one of my very favorite plugins. If we come up here to extensions, which used to be called plugins, we'll look down here and see a plugin called FC Airfoil Loader. And what that does is it loads airfoil sketches from data files, DAT files. These DAT files are available on the internet, and I'm going to show you where. Unfortunately, however, in SketchUp 2017, this plugin doesn't work. I loaded it here, tried to make it work, but it will not. That's the bad news. The good news is that older versions of SketchUp are still available, and an older version that is still available and that I know will import these airfoil DAT files is SketchUp Make 2014, and let's go there right now and I'll show you where you can get it. All right, here we are at the link that I posted below in the info, and this is a SketchUp community site, and here is where you can get SketchUp Make 2014. Just come down here and Windows Make 2014, Mac 2014, and there it is. Click on that, the executable will download, and all you have to do is install it. Now, one of the good things about SketchUp is these installations are standalone. In other words, SketchUp Make 2014, you won't have any problems with it overwriting either earlier or later versions. So you can install this without fear of your later version being corrupted or overwriting an earlier version. That's one of the nice things about SketchUp. They will install separately. So now you will have SketchUp Make 2014 on your computer, and here's what we're going to do with it. All right, everyone, here's the site that has almost every airfoil that you would ever be interested in dealing with model aircraft, and indeed full-size aircraft. It's called airfoiltools.com, all one word, airfoiltools.com. And then what you can do, well, I'm not going into a lengthy discussion about airfoils. I have found a very nice one by Dr. Michael Selig, that operates well at low Reynolds numbers. It's easy to make. It's flat bottomed. It's called the Selig 7055, Selig 7055. So type that into the search box on Airfoil Tools, and you can see a bunch of 7055 links come up. We'll select this one, and here we are. This is the airfoil that we're going to use, and as you can see here, it's noted that the 7055 is a low Reynolds number airfoil, and it is. It performs very well. What we're interested here is the DAT file, D-A-T, and as you can see, it's just a text file with coordinates, and these coordinates are what we are going to import into SketchUp using the airfoil data loader. Now, again, there's all sorts of easy ways to get this DAT file information, and I'll show you how I'll do it here. What we need here is the DAT file coordinates. Now, they're in this little scrolly box here, but an easier way to do that is to come over here to the right-hand side in these drop-downs, Selig Format DAT File, and we're going to download that one. Don't use any other format right now. Selig Format, and you can see the entire series of coordinates comes up for that profile. Now, in order to get them into SketchUp using the airfoil data loader, we have to put that into an airfoil text file. So we'll just copy all of that, come down here. I've already got a bunch of them in this, so what we'll do now is just open up a new text file. I'll do this just like we were doing it from scratch, and label it any way you'd like. I'll do Selig 7055 test because I've already got it. So when you get to Selig 7055, whoops, now I've got to find it. Drop the coordinates into that text file, save it, and then when you get done, come back and change the file label to DAT, D-A-T. That's required in order for the loader to work. Now I've opened SketchUp Make 2014. As I said, they can run side by side with any other version of SketchUp. Once again, we want our camera view to be parallel projection, however. We're just working in 2D here. Now, the next thing that we need to do is come up to plugins. You know, it's called plugins now instead of extensions. But I've already installed the airfoil data loader on in SketchUp 2014 because, as I said, I use it all the time. So we'll select that plugin, and it will ask us to put a DAT file in here, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to come down here and find it. Let me take just a moment, and I'll be right back. Okay, I found my folder after a little search here, my airfoils. And here's the one that we just downloaded and called it Fuselage 7055 Test DAT. So we'll go ahead and open that one. I've got other versions of this, but we'll open the one we just downloaded. And here we go. And there you have it. There is your airfoil, and it's loaded in as a series of your data coordinate points and produces a perfect airfoil every time. Now what we have to do is get this airfoil into a SketchUp 2017, and that is easy also. First of all, we need to make this a component. And we'll call it Fuselage 7055, and we'll create that component. Now that it's a component, you can right-click on that and save as, and what this will allow you then to do is to go back in and, again, I'll have to search for this, but it'll allow you to go back to your airfoil folder and the little rental numbers. Here we go. And you can save it then as Fuselage 7055 SKP, which is just a SketchUp file. And as you can see, I've already done that. So save your file, and then now in your airfoil folder, you will have a Fuselage 7055.skp SketchUp file. All right, now back to our original program, SketchUp 2017. Okay, everyone, we're back in the SketchUp 2017 workspace, and this is what you need to do now to get that airfoil into 2017. It's very simple. Go to File, Import, and go to the folder where you saved Fuselage 7055.skp and select it. Hit Import, and it comes in. Now, if you'll look at where my cursor is right now, you will see it's a little tiny thing. So don't let it get lost here in the clutter. All you need to do now, it's attached to the cursor right now. All you need to do now is drop it on the image, and again, to make this easy, I'll just come in here to one of the lines that I know is on the plane, the face plane of the drawing, and we'll take that and I'll move this very end point onto that line. Now at least I know that it's on the ground plane. We're going to move it, but it's on the ground plane right now. And it's a little tiny. Of course, the scale tool is going to fix that. Hit S for scale. And once again, use the diagonal handles so that you scale it all uniformly. And we'll just pull these diagonal handles out a bit just to make this easier to handle. We're going to scale it again when we get it in place on our drawing. Now, before we move it over here, again, this is a rudder-only model. So the designer had the wing incidence angle and the incidence angle of the horizontal stabilizer fixed for that purpose. A rudder-only plane needs to climb continuously, and then you knock it down in altitude just by doing turns. We're going to set everything up at a 0, 0 thrust line. Come back over here to our good old T for tape tools, and we'll select the datum line again and pull down a parallel line down until we get to about the face of the airfoil. Now you can see we're just above the tail end here, so it's some of these things are going to need to be adjusted just a bit, but we can't be below the diameter of F1 up here. So we want to keep it above F1 and as close as we can to where it intersects the fuselage here in the back. So let's try putting it right about there, and we're just above both. So now we have a reference line here. We've dropped a construction line, and we're going to put the airfoil on that line. And while I'm doing that, I apologize for the detour that we had to make for SketchUp users. Those of you using other CAD programs, of course, it's going to be up to you to find a way to get those coordinates in, but every CAD program that I have ever seen had a way to import a set of coordinates for curves, and that's what we've got here. It's just a simple set of coordinates for curves. Now we've dropped our airfoil in here, and once again we need to scale it to size. Hit S for scale. Again, we're using only the diagonal handles. Now let's come in and see what we've got. We dropped that down there. We're a little bit above the exact thrust line that we need, so we'll hit move and just drop it down to that line. Now we have the airfoil in there, and it's a little bit thinner than the original, but that's to be expected because research has shown that these small models perform best with thinner airfoils. So now we've got our airfoil in there. We've got the chord line aligned 0, 0. I'll click away now. And we have the entire thing scaled to the correct size. We are going to move that now that we have it scaled to the correct size. We're going to move a copy so that we don't mess this up. This one we're going to keep, so hit M for move, Control C for a copy, and once again we're going to come here and get the very end point of the airfoil component, and we're just going to again drop it on a line that we know is a good line on our ground plane, and we're going to use that to make not only the wing saddle cut out, but we're going to use it to make the templates to cut the hot wire foam wing. So, but right now we're interested in the fuselage only, and we've got 3 templates to make: our saddle, our hatch, and the cutout for the horizontal stabilizer. And this is how we're going to do that. Alright, now we have an accurately sized airfoil, and of course you'll have to have your airfoil drawn in here too, whether you do it by hand using the Bezier curve, or whether you import it into a different CAD program, or however you get it, it's got to be here. Now, one of the first things we've got to do, since this airfoil now, we don't need this to be a component any longer because it's going to be part of a template. So in order to draw on it, we're going to select it, then hit explode. So now it's just its component parts. We can draw on it, we can eliminate parts of it, etc. What we need is this curve. We need a template that defines this curve so that we can attach it to the side of our foam model and run a hot wire across there and do a very, very accurate cutout. Well, that's easy to do. Here's how we're going to make that template. We'll start back in the back because just coincidentally we happen to be falling on a former right here. So let's get to, yeah, we're right on that former. That, again, was just a happy coincidence. This probably won't end up this way, but what you need to be is you need to be on the end of the airfoil. Kind of ignore the former for right now. So you need to be on the end of that airfoil. So select that end point instead of just online. And then you need to drop down a fairly arbitrary distance because this is just going to be where you rest the hot wire before you pull it up into the actual cut. Now we are going to come back to a known former because we're going to put this former number on here so you'll know which one to align it with. So we'll come back to a known former, and then we're just going to move up. Again, it's going to be a relatively arbitrary amount because all it has to be is high enough to tape to the side of the fuselage. So we'll come up to right about there. Now we'll go over, we need to be ahead of the, let me hit the line tool. We'll come over here to pick up the very point, the very front end of the airfoil. And let's see if we can come down here and just reference it to that point, keep them the same distance down. Now we're going to come out and just another arbitrary distance, just to make it stiff. And then we'll reference this point and connect the dots. Now, what we have now is a template that encompasses the airfoil. We don't need this bottom part of the airfoil. Some aircraft, if this were a mid-wing aircraft, we would have to make two of these. We would make one for the bottom part of the saddle, one for the top part of the saddle. And if it were a mid-wing aircraft, like, some of the Hellcat series or something like that. But we don't need the bottom of this now because the bottom, in actual fact, is going to be the bottom of the wing. So now that we have come in here and made the airfoil just a shape that we can edit or manipulate, we'll come in here and get rid of that, come in with our erase tool and erase this bottom. You can actually erase it or leave it because what we're going to do is just cut this out. But in order to print it out and make it a little bit neater, I'm going to go through here and erase this. And you'll see that I make the construction lines disappear every now and again. I've got a shortcut key on my keyboard that I defined as X. And what that does is it makes the construction lines appear and disappear at will just by hitting the key. X, they're on, X, they're off. The problem with leaving them on all the time is that if you have an actual line that lays atop one of these and you erase that line, you'll erase the construction line too. So being able to turn these on and off just makes that less likely. So now we have our template. This is going to be aligned to the datum line on the model. And by the way, let me go ahead and get a couple of these other construction lines that we no longer need out of here. These were just used to make the floor and the crossbar cut out on our thing. We don't need them anymore. So let's get rid of that. There's our template. Now, when you print these, of course, you're going to have to print two. You'll print one for the port, one for the starboard side, and we'll end up taping that on here. But now there's a couple of things we need to do before you just take this away and move it. First of all, we need our most important datum line here. Doing another autosave. I never have a problem with autosaves. Now, we've got a line drawn on our template that represents this data line so that we'll be able to position that accurately up and down. Now, as for fore and aft, we need to find out which former this line is on. So we'll have to go back here. Let's see, I ended up with just a lot of extraneous lines in here. Okay, I cleaned that up, and that's a good example of why you need to keep your workspace neater than I kept mine at any rate. I had too many extraneous lines back here, and it was getting confusing. So now the original 48 millimeter spacing lines are there, and that's all. Okay, back to what we had to do. We need to find out what former the back of the template is going to align with. So if we come over here to our list, we find out that tail end Charlie over here for the EPS is F14. So counting from the tail forward, if this is F14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So this is being aligned with former number 8, and in order to keep that in mind, we're going to come over here to our text tool, and what we're going to do is merely put a tag on there so that we know which former that's aligned with. Now there's not going to be one forward. What we're going to do when we tape this to the aircraft is we'll cut a tiny hole here so that we can see this line on the former and align it with our ever important datum line. So now we know former number 8, the datum line, and then we'll cut out a little peekaboo in the template up here. And again, you're going to need 2 of these. So we'll take this now. I really don't want that to be, they drop lettering in as components. I don't really want that to be a component. I just want it to stick right there to our template. Now we've got template for the wing saddle. We can move that. Let's take this. We'll select all of it. Hit the move tool. No copy this time. We just need to move the whole thing. And we're going to pull that over here. And again, now if I drop it here, there's a problem because it's interfering with the tops of these. So for right now, I'm just going to drop it somewhere in space. That might not even be on the ground plane. But I know this line is, so we'll come over and put another construction line in here. Select our template again. Move a known good point on the template, which is the end line of our datum, and we'll take that and put it right there. Now we know that's on the face of the image. So there's our wing saddle. Very easy. Next is the cutout for the hatch, and we're going to do that exactly the same way. Now those of you that are going to make a separate canopy, maybe vacuum molded or however you're going to do it, you can make a template that will come in here and cut out the outline for the canopy. That will cut it out of the foam, and then you can sit your canopy down on it. But mine's going to have an integral foam canopy. So all I need now is a cutout for the hatch. So we're going to do that in exactly the same way. Come to a known former position here in the front. And the known former position that we'll use will be F2 here. So we're going to drop a line down F2. What we're doing now is coming down to the datum line back to a more or less arbitrary point back here. The only thing that we need this line to do is be at an angle so that it's easy to remove the hatch. If it were a vertical, the hatch would be very difficult to get off vertically. So we're just going to come back to, that would do enough. Then we're going to come up to just behind the canopy. Right there. Then let's go up to, there. Now, we're going to do just, of course, the opposite that we did for the saddle. We need the template to come this way. So now we'll take the line tool again. We'll bring it back to a known former position right there, so that we'll have a known vertical line to align it with, and we'll come down. It doesn't matter where, really. This is just going to be taped to the fuselage along here to make it nice and steady. We'll put it there, and we'll come up forward, and we can use F1 up forward now. So let's do that. We'll take the line tool, go to F1, then we'll come down F1 until we are at the bottom of our template down here. Take the line tool again and connect them. Now we've got the template. We're going to run our hot wire down the front, toward the back, up the slope, and out. And this will cut off our hatch. Now again, we need to know which formers we're going to be aligning to. So once again, so now as not to make a mistake, which I'm prone to do, we say tail end Charlie is F14. And here we go, counting forward. F14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and we're on 8 again. So all we got to do now, come over here to our text tool, type in former 8, and just sit it on here so that we know that this is the one that we want. And once again, do not omit this line. This is going to be the most important one right there. That's going to align with the fuselage datum line. Again, the hot wire will enter here, come to the bottom, it'll move aft, up the slope, and out. And then this will just lift right off. Okay, once again, we're going to just make sure this is exploded, because we don't really want that to be a component any longer. So now we've gotten 2 of the 3 fuselage. Hit the move tool. 2 of the 3 fuselage formers done. And I'll move this over here with its wing saddle brother, and we'll just stick it on the same line. We've got one more former to go, and that's the one back here, or one more template to go, and that's the one back here that's going to determine the cutout for the horizontal stabilizer. And as I said, we're not going to use this ridiculous angle. So once more, back to our old faithful tape tool. We'll come down to the datum line, and then somewhere here, about in the center of this seesaw that we have currently listed there, we're going to drop that in, and we're going to use the old that looks about right. There we go. That looks about right for our formula. Now we're going to cut this out all the way out the back of the aircraft. Hot wire will come down here in front, and we will use the front here of the horizontal stabilizer as the correct position. So to do that, we'll start there, and we will come in on the line that we decided that we were going to put it on, and we're going to move aft just off of the model entirely. We'll come down again. It's an arbitrary amount, but enough to make the poster board stiff enough to handle. Then we'll come down to here. We'll move then over to a known former. We need a known former to align it to. Click there. We have to have it above the fuselage side because the hot wire has to come down that side. Now we'll go back over to where we started the base or the platform for the horizontal stab, and we'll select that endpoint, come up here, and close that off. Now what's going to happen is that the hot wire will ride down the face of this template and straight out the back and give us a nice level spot to mount that horizontal stab. Now One thing that I did not take into account, and that I probably should right here, is the thickness of that horizontal stab. So let's correct that, and that's going to be easy to do. I figure the thickness of that stab on a model aircraft of this size, covered with epoxy and fiberglass, 5 or 6 millimeters is plenty thick enough. So if we go with 6 millimeters, we can sand it actually to an airfoil shape. So I'll come in here one more time, and our tape tool will go up 3 millimeters from our original baseline. Move it. Let me get on the green axis. Hold on just a second. We've got to make sure that we're traveling on the correct axes. Now we'll go up 3, put that there. Now we'll come here, we'll come down 3, and put that there. So that is going to represent, we erase this line now. And again, I'm going to, if I just erase this line, I would erase this guideline. So now I'm going to use X to get rid of those just temporarily. I'll get rid of that, and now I'll put them back. So we want our baseline now to come down that extra 3 millimeters and out the back on the red axis. Now if we come over here and take a look, we'll see we've got lines just kind of hanging off. That doesn't matter. I'm going to erase them. So I'll erase that. Again, if I erase this, I'll erase my guideline here, and I don't want to do that. So turn the guides off, hide them, erase it, and then turn it back on. So now we've got the floor for our 6 millimeter stab. And while we've got this in here, we'll go ahead and determine the length of our stab. Now we are done with this template, except for, of course, listing the former there. So again, just so we don't mess up, tail end Charlie is number 14, remember? So we come back here to 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. Now we'll make a note here that the forward part of our template falls on F10. Whoops, that ended up being a little large, so what we'll do is we'll reduce the size of that some. Let's do it this way. There we go. So there's former F10. Now we're going to explode that so that it's part of our template. We're also going to come down here and put on our absolutely necessary datum line. And again, we'll put this out here. Okay, now we've got our template. We'll print out 2 of these, put one on either side, whack that out with a hot wire. But now I'm going to make this a component. And again, it doesn't matter what the component name or number is right now, because this is going to be just a one-time use. So we'll make that a component. The reason being is that we want to go ahead and outline our stab here and find out about our widths and distances. And we decided to make it 6 millimeters thick. So here's what we'll do. Now you'll notice I look like I'm drawing on the template, but remember we made it a component. So anything I draw will not stick to that unless I right click and hit edit component. Then it will stick. Well, I don't want it to do that. So I'll click off of the component, and that turns it back into, that turns off editing. Now you can see it's a component again. So what we're going to do now is just come in here, and we're going to make a very simple rectangle so that we can get some measurements off of this for our horizontal stab. We're going to click here, come down to endpoint. Although it says endpoint, we're not actually there, and we're going to come back here to the very end of the elevator, then go up to our 6mm depth and come back here. Now we have just made a rough estimate of where our elevator is going to actually fall. Now, since we're going to shape this into an airfoil shape, we'll do the shaping outside of the boundaries of the actual fuselage. So what we need to do now is we need to include this thickness in our cutout, because the part of the fuselage that we're going to remove is right here, and this will lift out. You do not want to come down here and slice this one yet, but you do want to come down and slice this one. That gives us a piece of the foam fuselage that we can cut out, set aside, and sit right back in here on top of the horizontal stab when we do that. So now we're going to make this a component too. And just anything, just label it anything. Now we have two components. We'll separate them over here because we're going to have two separate templates for this. Our first cut will come down and go out the back here for just the section here we're going to lift and set aside. Then we'll come down and cut this portion for the horizontal stab to rest on. Hope that was clear in what we're doing here and not too confusing. So now I'm going to take both of these and move them over here to our storage area. Okay, and here we are. I'll drop it on that line. Alright, now what we have done is complete every single template that's necessary for the construction of our fuselage. We have all of our formers, fuselage formers, to cut our sections with. When we stack those up and bond them together, we have our three templates that we're going to use to cut the wing saddle, whether you do the cockpit or just the hatch, our hatch template, and then the final template back here for the horizontal stab. Okay, so let's see, what is next? Well, everyone, I said, what's next? Next is going to be part 8, and we'll start working on the actual wing. We will begin by making the templates for the hot wire cutter to cut out our foam core, and that's what we will start with on the next episode. So thanks for staying with me this far, and come back if you're still with me to do part 8. Thank you.